Just 5 more minutes, Maya Jackson, a black woman, whispered. Not to her 2 sons sleeping soundly in the back seat of the taxi, but to steady herself. 5 minutes, to breathe, to summon every ounce of courage for her first day at this terrifying place, the Sterling estate. The iron gates loomed ahead, massive and cold like fortress walls. To most, they symbolized power and wealth. To Maya, they were a doorway to judgment. One misstep, and she and her children would lose everything. She knew she was about to take a reckless leap. This wasn't just about starting a new job. This was the mansion of Julian Sterling, the billionaire whispered across the city as cold and ruthless. But Maya had no other choice. She came here to work, to find a chance at life for her boys. And if it were you, would you dare gamble your entire future just to hold on to a job like this? In her bag, her wallet was so thin, it held nothing but a few coins. On the taxi floor, the tin of baby formula was nearly empty. Maya glanced at her sons. Leo clutched little Miles tightly, both asleep, their heads resting against each other. The sight made her heart ache. She couldn't let them grow up in constant lack, not like this. The taxi stopped. Maya paid, tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, and drew a deep breath. She stepped out. A sharp wind swept in from the estate, chilling her to the bone. The mansion loomed silent, golden light spilling from a few windows. She pushed the gate open and hurried inside, as if racing against time itself. She led the boys into a hidden corner of an old laundry room. The air reeked of bleach, a flickering fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Maya knelt and whispered, "Boys, let's play hide-and-seek. Sit here, eat Mommy's cookies. I'll be right back." She handed each of them a small cookie. Leo nodded, eyes wide with trust. Miles, still groggy, only hugged the cookie in his hand. Looking at them, Maya's throat tightened. She knew she was wagering their safety for this job. But what other choice was left? She closed the door and stepped out into the marble hallway. The stone floor was cold underfoot, the lights casting harsh squares of brightness. Her footsteps were so soft that even she couldn't hear them. Her heart pounded wildly, ready to leap from her chest. Then, the sound of a door bursting open. Maya spun around, not the butler, not security, Julian Sterling himself. He wasn't in the polished suits from magazine covers, just a white shirt, sleeves rolled high, fatigue etched across his face. He walked straight toward the storage room, where he kept an old bottle of whiskey. But when he opened the door, it wasn't liquor he found. It was 2 children. Leo and Miles sat on the floor, clinging to each other. A broken cookie crumb lay between them. Miles whimpered from hunger, and Leo gently patted his back, whispering small, fragile words. Julian froze. Eyes that had always been cold and unyielding flickered. The sight stunned him, as if it had torn open some buried wound. Maya rushed forward, face pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Every apology, every excuse she had prepared vanished. She stood trembling, bracing for fury. But Julian did not shout. He did not roar. His gaze lingered on the boys, softening in a way even he couldn't explain. For a fleeting moment, the ice melted, revealing a hidden pain. Leo looked up at him, not afraid. The boy held out the last piece of cookie, lips moving with a single word. "Dada?" Silence suffocated the air. Maya's world spun, her heart skipped a beat. Julian dropped to one knee. The movement was slow, like he was wrestling with himself. He didn't take the cookie, but his eyes blurred. One tear, just one, slipped down his sharp cheek. Then he turned away quickly, hiding it. Maya clutched her children, whispering comfort, but when she looked up, she no longer saw only the mask of a billionaire's cold face. She saw a man haunted by his own ghosts, and the question burned in her mind. What could make a man as icy as Julian Sterling shed tears at the unconscious word of a child? The next morning, Maya woke with a strange feeling. No honking cars, no landlord pounding the door for rent. Instead, when she opened her eyes, she saw her boys still curled on a clean rug, golden light spilling down from an ornate chandelier in the secondary kitchen. Everything was so peaceful that Maya pinched her own hand to be sure it wasn't a dream. She remembered the moment from the night before. Julian Sterling's eyes when he saw the children, eyes unlike the rumors that painted him as unfeeling. Not pure ice, not rage. Something flickered, like a tiny crack in the thick sheet of frost the world believed he wore. But Maya didn't dare assume. She only knew one thing. At least she still had a job. At least her boys had somewhere to sleep without fear of being thrown onto the street. Her first day felt like walking on thin ice. Every move was careful. Wiping tables, tidying rooms, carrying trays. One mistake, she was sure, would cost her everything. The butler said little, only gestured, while the other staff watched Maya with curiosity and suspicion. Everyone knew, working in the Sterling mansion was no easy feat, and Maya, a single black mother, stood out like a misplaced piece in a perfect puzzle. What surprised her, though, was Julian himself. He never mentioned last night. No reproach, no hard stare. He only told the butler, "Prepare a playroom near the kitchen for the children." His voice was flat, like an order, devoid of warmth. But to Maya, those words were a lifeline. That evening, when Miles ran a slight fever, Maya panicked. The boy lay limp on the mattress, cheeks burning red. In her frenzy, Maya softly hummed an old hymn, one her mother had used to lull her as a child. Her voice trembled, broken, but it soothed Miles. Maya didn't know that out in the hall, someone had stopped. Julian, passing by, stood still and listened. He didn't enter. He lingered behind the half-closed door, silent as a shadow. The next morning, a brand new bottle of children's fever medicine and a digital thermometer appeared on the kitchen counter. No note, no signature. Maya's hand trembled as she touched them, heart tightening. She didn't ask who left them. She knew, and that small gesture warmed her chest like a hidden flame. Days later, at 3 a.m, Miles cried for milk. Maya stumbled to the kitchen, half asleep, mixing formula in silence, the spoon clinking against the glass. Suddenly, footsteps. Julian appeared, shirt rumpled, eyes etched with fatigue. He said nothing, just leaned against the counter, arms folded. The silence made Maya's pulse race. She sighed and murmured, "My husband used to make night bottles for the boys. He said it was so I could sleep a little longer." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Julian stayed quiet for a long moment, eyes drifting far away. Then, in a low, rough voice, he said, "My mother. She loved lavender. The whole room always carried that scent." They didn't tell long stories, just fragments, disjointed, pieces. Yet those fragments shared a truth. They were shards of memory, of loss. And sometimes, shards could weigh more than whole books. From that night, Julian began coming home earlier. He never stepped into the playroom, never sat on the floor with the boys, but he often left his office door open, letting in the sound of Leo's giggles and Miles's babbling. Once, Leo dashed in, his toy truck skittering beneath Julian's desk. The boy struggled to retrieve it. Without looking from his computer screen, Julian nudged the truck out with his foot. Leo beamed, scooped it up, and looked up. "Thank you, Dada." Julian froze. His fingers stilled on the keyboard, hands clenching tight. No one in the world dared call him that. Yet the boy did, freely, innocently, as if it were the most natural thing. One day, while cleaning the office, Maya noticed a drawer slightly ajar, the key still in the lock. She hesitated, but curiosity won. She pulled it open. Inside, no papers or cash. Only a small, tarnished silver locket engraved with a single name. Gabriel. Maya froze. She knew she shouldn't touch it. She shut the drawer quickly, but the image haunted her mind. That night, Julian caught her standing near the desk, eyes fixed on the locked drawer. He didn't ask. He didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the dark window. "That's my son's name. Gabriel. My child with Victoria." He paused, drawing a ragged breath, voice hoarse. "She wasn't my wife. Only my fiancé. But we had Gabriel, and I thought that was enough to be a family." Maya held her breath. The name, the word fiancé, cut through the air like a blade. "When he was born," Julian went on, voice trembling faintly, "Victoria arranged an exclusive Vanity Fair shoot. They splashed the headline, 'America's New Power Family.' She cradled Gabriel, smiling like he was a trophy. She told me, 'See, Julian, we're a perfect brand.'" His hand clenched the desk. "And then Gabriel died at 6 months. Sudden infant death. No warning." Julian swallowed hard, voice dropping. "I shattered. Victoria, she only worried about canceling interviews. A week after the funeral, she told me my grief was negative energy, a pitiful image ruining the brand she'd built. And then she left." The air grew thick. Maya looked at him, her chest heavy. Julian hadn't just lost a son. He had lost the belief that love or family would ever stand by him through pain. Sometimes you think you've weathered the storm, only to realize you've just stepped into the eye of it. For Maya, that moment came when the name Victoria Davenport resurfaced, and not quietly. She returned in full spectacle, splashed across the cover of Forbes. A meticulously staged photo. Julian in a flawless suit, Victoria in a shimmering mermaid. Gown, lips painted crimson, her hand clamped onto his arm. The bold headline declared, "America's New Power Couple." At first glance it glittered, but the absence was glaring. In that perfect portrait, there was no place for Gabriel, the child who had died, and no trace of the bitter truth Julian had once revealed. Victoria had scrubbed the past clean, as if it had never existed. Inside the mansion, the magazine circulated from hand to hand. Staff murmured admiration. Such a beautiful pair, a perfect match. Some even half joked, half hoped. Maybe it'll be the wedding of the century. Maya overheard and bowed her head, staying silent. But inside, every word was salt in a wound, because she knew that so-called perfection was built on the erasure of a child. And then came the charity gala, the night Victoria walked back into their lives for real. Golden chandeliers blazed, piano music floated, and guests laughed over champagne. Maya, in her servant's uniform, carried a tray of glasses, her palms slick with sweat. She prayed not to stumble, not to shatter crystal. Her only wish was to finish the shift and hurry back to Leo and Miles. But fate had other plans. The kitchen door swung open. A wave of expensive perfume swept in, drowning the smell of food. Victoria stood there, sequined gown, chin tilted, eyes scanning the kitchen like she was appraising merchandise. "Oh, you must be Maya." Her voice stretched, sweet yet cold. Truly admirable. A black woman, a single mother, now with the chance to work in the Sterling household. Such an inspiring story. To anyone else it sounded like praise, but the way she pressed on black made it sting like poison. Sugared words, salted dagger. Maya's heart clenched, but Victoria wasn't finished. She sipped champagne, lips frozen in a smile. But touching stories always have their ending. Decorations in a house of power can always be replaced. And Julian. His heart is generous, but forgetful, especially with things temporary. Smooth words, no raised voice, yet each syllable fell like stone. To her, Maya and the boys were nothing but temporary ornaments. Maya didn't argue. She returned to her work, but inside, anger smoldered. A few days later, disaster struck. The silver locket engraved with Gabriel's name, the only keepsake Julian had kept, vanished. Panic swept the estate. Rooms overturned, drawers yanked open. Maya clutched Miles as security barged in, her hands trembling. Leo hid behind her, legs, eyes wide, uncomprehending. Then the locket was found, not on the floor, not in Julian's study. It had been shoved clumsily beneath Leo's crib mattress. No one had to say it. Maya knew instantly. A trap. Too neat, too convenient. The perfect setup. A desperate single mother stealing an irreplaceable heirloom, hiding it in her child's bed. Julian was away on business in Chicago. The manager, cornered under Victoria's pressure, could only sigh. We're sorry, but this cannot be overlooked. Maya's heart plummeted. But unlike before, she did not cry, did not beg. She spoke clearly, each word sharp as a blade. I did not take it, and I will not let anyone make me or my children scapegoats for their filth. She rose, gathered her things. Leo whispered, Mama, where are we going? Maya squeezed his hand and forced a smile. Before leaving, she stopped by Julian's office, scribbled on a sticky note, and placed it neatly on his desk. You taught me that the most precious things cannot be stolen. They've taken my job, but they cannot take the truth. Then Maya took her boy's hands and walked through the grand gates. No shouting, no drama. Just a mother refusing to raise her children in a house where lies were served as lavishly as the banquets. When Julian returned from his business trip, the Sterling estate felt unnervingly hollow. No sound of Leo's laughter, no small footsteps darting down the halls. Only emptiness. On his desk lay a neatly placed sticky note, in Maya's handwriting. You taught me that the most precious things cannot be stolen. They've taken my job, but they cannot take the truth. Julian sat down. Hands that had once signed billion-dollar contracts trembled as they held the slip of paper. He didn't believe Maya was a thief. If she'd wanted money, there were 100 easier ways. But Leo's trusting gaze, Miles's arms clinging to his mother, those things could never be faked. He gave a quiet order. Review all the security footage. Victoria was there, legs crossed, a faint smile playing at her lips. You really mean to waste time on this? A poor, black, single mother. In the eyes of the public, she's nothing more than a pity story. You'd put the Sterling name at risk. For her? Julian didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the screen, scrubbing through clips. Victoria rose, leaned closer, and lowered her voice just enough for everyone to hear. Julian, you were born for magazine covers, to rule an empire, not to shield a woman who's nothing more than a prop in your charity image. Be sensible. The only thing she's given you is trouble. Julian looked up, voice calm but cutting. She gave me the truth, and I will not let anyone turn 2 children into pawns for their filth. Victoria faltered, but quickly recovered, lifting her glass as if his words were meaningless. For days, Julian sat watching hours of footage. Whispers spread. He's blinded. The evidence is clear. In this society, it was all too easy to brand a poor black woman a criminal. A single planted clue was enough. Then Julian noticed it. 30 seconds of static, exactly when the locket vanished. Too precise to be a chance. He hired independent specialists. After long hours, the restored image appeared, a former security guard sneaking into the nursery, sliding the locket under the crib. Financial records confirmed he'd just received a hefty transfer from a shell company tied to the Davenport family. Every link fell into place. An emergency charity board meeting was called. Victoria entered tall and radiant, her gown glittering under the lights, as if the stage were hers alone. She began smoothly. We need to speak of transparency and integrity. The Sterling brand must remain spotless. Heads nodded, but then the screen lit up. The video played clear as daylight. The man tucking the locket beneath the crib. Murmurs rippled. Victoria blanched, though she clung to her smile. This is a technical glitch. We can't let a few stray seconds ruin our work. Julian stood. His voice wasn't loud, but it thundered. A glitch? You bribed a man. You used innocent children as tools. And worse, you weaponized the memory of my son, Gabriel. Is that the integrity you preach? The room froze. Victoria's hand shook, red lipstick smudging her glass. She searched for allies, but no one met her eyes. Julian placed bank statements on the table. Here is your investment, Victoria, and here is your profit. Disgrace. This board is built on trust, not lies, and your brand from this moment is bankrupt. The vote to expel her passed almost unanimously. She stood rooted, her glamour stripped away. No champagne, no flashbulbs. Only the cold stares of those who once hailed her as queen of image. Julian didn't stay to watch. He walked out, leaving behind whispers sharp as blades. That afternoon, he went to the small apartment Maya had rented. Modest but tidy, job applications neatly stacked on the table. Maya was buttoning Leo's shirt, ready to head out. Julian placed a tablet down, the restored video playing. I wasn't here to protect you, he said hoarsely. And I know an apology isn't enough. I only ask for a chance to rebuild the trust I broke. Maya stayed silent, eyes on the screen. Her heart tightened, not with anger, but with the weary release of a burden carried too long. Outside, Leo and Miles chased each other, laughter filling the air. Julian listened, and for the first time in years, children's voices didn't tear at him. They reminded him instead, some pain isn't meant to be erased, but to teach us how to guard what truly matters. Julian didn't return to the estate after that board meeting. He went straight to Maya's small apartment. When the door opened, Leo rushed out, shouting in surprise, "Dada!" and clung tightly to his leg. Miles rubbed his sleepy eyes but still smiled when he saw him. Maya stood behind them, frozen, caught between wariness and confusion. Without a long explanation, Julian simply held out the tablet with the evidence that had exposed the truth. He said quietly, I wasn't there to protect you, but from now on, I want to stay and protect. Maya didn't answer immediately. She only pulled her boys close, wrapping them in her arms. But for the first time, her eyes toward him were not completely closed. In the days that followed, Julian began appearing more often. At first, it was just dropping off grocery bags for Maya. Then, he stayed longer. One evening, he sat silently on the worn sofa, listening as Leo stumbled through spelling practice. Another time, he awkwardly held Miles while Maya cooked in the kitchen. It was strange. This man who had dined at silver tables with waiters in white gloves, now sitting before a bowl of lukewarm soup and a loaf of burnt bread. But he never complained. If anything, it was Maya who felt embarrassed, while he seemed almost relieved, as if finally he could eat a meal without pretense. Then one morning, a social worker knocked on the door. Julian had arranged everything in advance. On the table lay a neat folder of adoption papers. Maya hesitated, glancing at him. Are you sure? This isn't just temporary help. Julian's reply was short, but his eyes burned with rare resolve. This is family. When the pen touched down, Leo cheered, thinking it was part of a game. Miles wrapped his tiny arms around Julian's neck, his small fist clutching the collar of his shirt. In that moment, no cameras, no announcements were needed. A family had been formed. That evening, Julian didn't return to the estate. He stayed in the small apartment, sharing the simplest meal he'd had in years. Maya's spaghetti, slightly salty stir-fried vegetables, and cookies Leo insisted on breaking in half for Miles. Julian sat there, sleeves rolled up, letting Miles climb into his lap while Leo chatted about school. Maya watched, and her heart filled with something unfamiliar, not loud joy, but peace, a peace she had thought she'd never feel again. At the opening of the Gabriel Children's Center, Maya stood on the stage, her voice steady and calm. No, one can change the past, but we can choose to let children grow up with hope, not fear. Applause thundered. But amid the applause, Leo and Miles ran across the yard, shouting, "Daddy, look!" Julian turned, laughing, bending to scoop them up. This time the word daddy carried no hesitation, no mistake. It belonged to him, as if it had always been his. Maya watched and nodded. No wedding, no grand vows were needed. Family, sometimes, begins with a choice. The choice to stay, the choice to protect, the choice to call each other home. Some stories begin in despair, but end in hope. Maya had thought she was gambling her last chance to raise her sons. Julian had believed his heart had turned to stone after loss. Yet they met in a fleeting moment, and that moment opened into a new family. The lesson is simple. Family isn't only made by blood or ceremony. Family can begin with a choice to stay, a choice to protect, a choice to call one another home. Out there, many still believe happiness must be defined by grand weddings or legal papers. But for Maya, for Julian, happiness lived in the unconscious cry of "Daddy" from two little boys in a humble dinner filled with laughter. And maybe, just maybe, it's those small things that form the strongest foundation for a home. And what about you? What do you believe truly defines a family? Bloodline, marriage, or the choice and love that bind us? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story so more heartfelt stories like this can be told.